Hey there, rulers, DMO73 here, and I may be in Japan, but I've still got a feature match for you. Today, I'm playing a snake-morphed Lyka versus Azure and their updated post-mask world Seer Christie. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Ruler School is brought to you by Odyssey Games, where you can go to pre-order upcoming Force of Will sets, ccgprime.com for singles and supplies, cardodoko.com for those rulers in the international market looking for product, the Ruler School Circuit Series now taking orders on our Q4 2024 circuit kits, and our guest lecturer members, Vite Ramen. Class is in session. So here we are getting into it, snake form Lyka, all about kind of a Voltron style build, getting snake form flipped over as fast as possible, and then ripping your opponent's hands to shreds while drawing a bunch of cards. And you get to do it not through discard, but through randomly tucking it back. And then Seer Christie, we've seen this before. It is a deck that is making use of the elf package to make cheaper resonators, to be able to then proc trials to get good value, while Christie helps keep your hand filled. So even in the era post mask, this is still something that is very viable and contendable. It just got to watch out for mask, and obviously in this matchup we're not going to have to deal with mask because snake form Lyka also doesn't like mask, but it is a fellow kind of control shell, Voltron control shell, so we'll see what comes out on top here. Snake form getting to go first. Not the best start. We probably would want to go second so we have access to potential turn one coined snake, but just doesn't happen, and so we're going to have to kind of wait our turn and take our chances there. Now, also a nice thing for snake form against Seer Christie is the access to being able to redirect spots, redirect targeted removal, which is something that Seer Christie is very good at, and also making it so the stuff can't be attacked, which is a good way for things like the 3-drop elf that gets cheaper to not be able to attack anything, right? So that's helpful. Again, belligerence precision can be a big problem for us. So, and not really necessarily for snake form because of the fact that stuff can't be attacked. So seeing Guardian Dragon come down on one for Azure over here, we're going to go ahead and go into the snake right out the bat. It has untouchable and swiftness, so we'll be able to swing in. And also, even though we're at 0 will, we are at a nice position to be able to use that Therion morphing in our hand, because it will get us to be able to transition into snake morphed Lyka for free, because Therion morphing costs us 0, right? And we can get in there for 1 and start ripping those hands apart. So we're going to get to draw a card, keep our hand filled. You see we have we're making use of both of the Expel or RFG water cards in this deck, Zacky's New Plan, as well as Last Movement, as a way to take advantage of having this full hand card size, full card size hand, to then make use of them for paying for cost, especially if we're wanting to leave will open to be able to protect snake form once it has happened. So let's rip a card out of the hand and then we'll pass turn. I'm gonna take some damage from this Guardian Dragon here, most likely. Seeing a Shockstone come down from Azure, getting to look at the top 2 cards of the deck and put them back in any order. So we'll see exactly what comes out of that. And then probably just going to see a swing in with this Guardian Dragon. It's going to be damage. We understand that. And then we'll see how it goes from there. Has called Stone. Double checking some text real quick on Snake Morph just to be double sure of something. And we're seeing what Azure's going to want to do with this turn. Trying to get the most value out of this Guardian Dragon as possible. Can't attack the snake. Swing in the air, just dealing that damage. And then going to go ahead and use Sature the Misty Dragon to try to flicker out his own dragon to then be able to have it come back in at the end of the turn. It will then get to ramp a stone. And at this point in time, we have 2 options. We can try to use Last Movement, burning the Zacky's New Plan, or we can burn the Last Movement to play the new plan. So there's a world here where I think Last Movement is the better spell here, because what we're doing is we're essentially trying to force Azure to tap out. We're saying, look, if you want to ramp, we'll let you, but it'll cost you an extra 2 will to get the Guardian Dragon out. Stone will come and play tapped. I'll have a full turn to kind of do whatever I want, and we get to go from there. The Last Movement is going to resolve. put the Guardian Dragon back in the hand so it doesn't get flickered in. And now if Azure wants to ramp again, he has to tap out, which gives us a good opportunity to be able to try to make some moves. The other reason why the last movement here makes sense is because we do play Replicant Genshi Tenshon in this deck to help push in damage, keep our card value high. It naturally has Barrier, which is pretty good against Seer Christie, and it helps generate some good value because like a Snake Morph can't be blocked, right? So that's 1,000 damage every time she attacks. It's +2 damage. It's +2 cards, plus another card at the end of the turn. You can get some pretty mad value pretty quick here. So it's just a question of, does Azure want to leave open will to try to interact or maybe throw cancels, or are we just throwing a Guardian Dragon at the wall and seeing what sticks? Looking to see here, you see there's the Genshi in hand. There's access to a Death Scythe as well. Electrous Training is very helpful. Guardian Dragon is going to get to come down here, ramps another stone. It's the 4C stone, so we get to look at the peak of the top 2, put them back stones. And at the end of the turn, we're going to go ahead and throw out that Lycan morphed to Therion morphing to shift into snake form, which is helpful. So we get to draw. We'll get to recover, we'll get to call stone without resting, and then we can kind of do some pretty silly things from there. There's another Therion morphing, very helpful. We'll call stone without resting. Now that we're tapped out as the Seer Christie deck, we're pretty safe to go for this Replicant Genshi Tenshon, which is going to generate us some extra will. If we need to, obviously we don't want to have to use it because it'll get us access to the extra damage and the draw cards, but it is nice to have. Death Scythe comes down here to help us pump up and deal even more damage with Snake Morphed. So we'll go in for 6, which becomes 10 because of the Genshi Tenshon. We get to draw 2 more cards and rip a card out of hand there. Hitting the 5-drop, gets shuffled in. And at the end of the turn, we're going to get another card from the hand. So keeping a good amount of hand advantage here, even as the red deck. Like I said, Jeremy doesn't. I typically don't play red decks, but they certainly have found some ones that I've enjoyed, and all of them draw a lot of cards. So we'll see what comes out of there. Obviously, would have liked to see some more red in there. I do have a second snake, which will be helpful for later if this first one gets killed, or for try to a follow up of a snake morph swing, kill it, generate another, do snake morphed again, like cycling there, drawing for Genshi Tenshon. No real like responsiveness in hand there, which kind of sucks. Like we do some pretty cool stuff with this deck in regards to unchaseable things with like Liberation of the Fires. We just didn't see any of it this turn. Sitting at a good point to be able to push in some damage here. Does decide to shock himself, goes down to 23. So we are in a bit of a race between Guardian Dragon and Lyka Snake Morphed, which is not a bad place to be, right? If we can get to something like Liberation of the Fires, we can get that guy off the board pretty easily. We don't have to worry about that. We've got plenty of snakes in hand to follow up. We're going to be digging a lot of cards in this match. So it's just a matter of seeing what comes out of it. No Resonators in graveyard is pretty good for us right now as well. A very good spot to be in. One thing to note is that Lyka also has Untouchable for her effects, so being able to redirect doesn't cost me any will. Now we see this Hunter's area come down, and it's going to attempt to try to make the Lyka, like when it taps, it can, change the race of Lyka. This is a little bit, maybe not the most appropriate thing for I should do here. Like when it taps, there's something to be said about maybe waiting. So it's going to be trying to use to make me an elf. There's something to be said about I should wait to redirect it back to the dragon until the Judgment of Helsing happens, because then I can redirect the Judgment of Helsing back to the to the dragon so that it will get killed at the end of the turn, like lose all of its abilities and die at the end of the turn instead of the thing. Now I just made this Albrecht cheaper because now Azure has 2 elves on the field. So little bit of a misplay on my kind of like giving some good advantage. This was actually honestly also a good play for Azure, kind of making use of that. Has 3 elves now, so now Albrecht is swinging for 7. Gonna try to kill the snake. We say that is fine. The snake is dead. Now we get to draw from Hunter's area, and we'll get to cheat in a treasury item. This is primarily from the EX deck. This is one of the big shifts that the deck has kind of gone from, is that most of the treasuries at this point are only going to exist in the treasury deck, because we don't want to flood our deck with cards that won't be able to be grabbed just in case there does a mask come down. It's kind of like Trials is just potential advantage as opposed to like guaranteed advantage manipulating the main deck. So Fleeting Moon Jewel gets to come down here, looking to see if we get to try to enter something, and it is a reflecting blue moon, and that is going to call Genshi Tenshon, which is not great. Like, this is a bad spot for me at this point. Hunter's area gets to come down here. I do have a Resonator engraved that can get grabbed. So this turn's getting a little nuts, right? And now she'll be able to flip, and because I don't have any more will available, like this is what I'm saying, is it can now target the Genshi Tenshon, and I don't have any will available to be able to protect the Lyka at this point. So now Genshi is now able to be killed by, because it doesn't have its barrier. And so that's going to get killed, and then a bunch of things are going to happen. 2 Hunter areas trigger, so we get to draw 2 cards. Christie is then going to try to flip itself back face down. Albrecht's going to come back to the field, and we get a treasury trigger because something died. So like huge turn here for Azure, getting to do some pretty serious work. And not having access to Genshi Tenshon for the rest of the game is certainly going to make this 1200 life total really tough for me to try to come back from. Just not a lot of damage. And I'll be able to, I can't even pump is the biggest problem, right? Because the Death Scythe with reflected blue moon on the field now would make my stats actively smaller, which is not what I want. It's not great. So we're going to go ahead and play Communication with Animals. This is going to try to reveal Bunny to go get Bunny. The idea here essentially being that we're going to maybe try to rush down and rip a bunch of cards out of hand. There's a world where we could use this turn to like double Lycan morph. Like if we had Genshi Tenshon or a way to deal with the reflected blue moon into a Genshi Tenshon, like there's a world where this turn is just lethal because like we can swing with one, kill it, Therian morph the other one into it, like do all kinds of stuff. And we're certainly going to try to draw some cards here with Snake, but it's not going to necessarily help us very much. So Lyka is going to get to go in here for 6 unblockable. So we're going to go down to 17, draw 2, get to shuffle 1 back. Though I think we have a response to the trigger. You see, I even have a Genshi Tenshon in hand there. So if we had a way to answer the reflected blue moon, we'd just have lethal, which would be nice. But unfortunately, not so much. So we do get to draw 2, shuffle a card away at random. 8 cards in hand at this point. So we'll go down to 6 cards in hand, or 7 cards in hand. Swing in for 1 with the other snake to draw another card. Paying 1. Gonna do a mirror in response to try to stop it. Try to draw. The main purpose of trying to draw here is to see if we can draw into a Liberation of the Fires. Hitting a random card. Seeing if we can draw into a Liberation of the Fires, because I have a way to like RFG another card from the graveyard if I really needed to. But unfortunately, just not seeing what we're needing and seeing the fact that there is that Guardian Dragon out on the field, just saying, oh, I wish I could have this Genshi Tenshon, but it doesn't really happen. Having to discard at end of turn. We're seeing if there's any kind of sequencing that might get us to something. Because the biggest problem, the Guardian Dragon just gets to swing and kill us, right? So we'll use the rabbit by removing the Communication with Beasts. We see a Romulus. We have Remus in hand, and I go, nope, nothing here gets me to access to kill the Guardian Dragon. So it just swings, and we move on to game 2. So kind of that one big turn for Azure. If we had seen something like a Liberation of the Fires, I think we would have been in better shape. Anything to kind of stop the sequencing, keep ourselves safe would have been nice. Just to do some spot removal could have bought us some much needed time. But again, the Reflected Blue Moon is also just very, very good against this deck, being able to stop the Genshi Tentron's extra damage. So choosing to take the coin here, this is again so we can try to set up a turn 1 snake, do some pretty silly stuff there if needed. You see I do have snake in hand. And I have Therion morphing, but we're going to try to get some maybe additional value out of here first. So seeing what Azure's going to do here after mulligans, probably going to see a Christie drawing a card just to go up to 6 at the beginning of the game because of the tap ability. Resolving mulligans on my side. Deciding to just, now we're just going to keep it. Calling a stone with Seer. See that. Pay 3, look at the top 2. This makes sense that we're not using the Christie ability yet, because this at least says which one of these 2 cards would you like to draw. They both stay on top of the deck because of Stone of Sorrow, but, you know, if one of them is better than the other, then Azure knows that they can draw it right away. And just to pass at that point, which is very interesting. To try to generate some hand advantage, primarily because we got the Liberation of the Fires there in grave, we're going to go ahead and try to do Rabbit for free. So this is going to put it out. It's very small. It gets us a beast. We can get Romulus, which is nice when the Remus is also there, because then we can just shove Remus at the bottom of the deck and not have to worry about it. Going to use Lyka's ability to remove the snake from the graveyard to burn my own Rabbit for 200. And then deal 200 damage to myself because I'm the player with the highest life total. The reason why is because we also kind of want Rabbit to get sent to the graveyard too, and then Rabbit can buy us back the snake because of his own ability. Down comes an end of turn Elvish Archer to make it a 100 defense, which interestingly enough then kills it, but not because it'll have 200 damage on it and it has 100 stats. So it actually gets destroyed, but not by Elvish Archer, which is interesting. It just gets destroyed by rules process. And so that actually works out great for me because now I can use the Rabbit to buy back the snake as well. So draws for turn, swings for 3, hits me for 4, burns himself for 3, hits me for 4, go down to 34 all, seeing a card get placed face down. This is another good way that the deck can kind of manipulate draws with Christie by just paying to put cards face down, and then being at 5 cards, so then you can use Christie, paying to put a second card face down. End of turn, we're going to use Lyka's ability again to burn the Elvish Archer and both of us for 200 because we're tied for the highest life. Go down to 32. Drawing, letting him read Lyka for the first time ever. Pretty sure that those are both either Reflected Blue Moons, which aren't a huge deal at this point, or Lunar Lakes, which is something to kind of keep in mind. So we're going to burn coin in 1 to put out our Snake of Aradia. Swing in for 1. Ping for 1, and then we see a response to trigger, and you see us do a little bit of a sequence here, and then we kind of rewind it for the sake of the playability of the match. So I go because second Lunar Lake, and I go, oh wait, no, let's be smart about this for the sake of recording. So first Lunar Lake comes down. In response, I'm going to go ahead and do Therion morphing to shift into snake form. This will still cancel the ability. I won't get to do anything, but it doesn't kill. And so there's no trials trigger, and I get to leave a will open for later. So this is just the smarter play line for sequencing wise, and just kind of teach you guys there. So we accept that we're losing the card. We accept that we're losing not being able to draw a card, but this does put us up having a will available, having access to snake form next turn. We get a mirror still for something later, like an Alberek, because there's 2 elves on the field, which is good for us. And so then, you know, Death Scythe can help pump next turn. And like, it just puts us in a better position overall to be able to interact. And it does burn one of the Lunar Lakes, which is mindful, without having to have something destroyed, and then Trials gets triggered and goes off from there. So just a better position and better sequencing there for you guys to kind of watch and learn from, rather than us just me being a dingus and wasting all my cards when I'm not going to get any triggers anyway. Azure, honestly, at this point in time, not sure liking the fact that there is a elf on the field. There's no resonators in either graveyard, so elvish. So the addition, Hunting Ground, isn't great here. Alberek only costs 1 now because there's 2 elves, so they could be mirrored. And it's just not a great, and it can't attack into the Snake Morph anyway. So we're just going to go ahead and recover, pump up, call stone, swing in, and in response to no blocks, pump it again. So 1,000 damage. We get to draw 2 cards. Now we get to start really ripping things to shreds. We'll hit the 6th card off the top of the deck, recognizing that this gets shuffled in, and then Azure's going to get to draw back up to 6 immediately. But as you see here, we have triple mirror in hand. So we're feeling pretty confident. Not quite confident enough to start jamming the Genji Tantrum quite yet, but we have that in hand. Waiting if we could maybe go into a little bit of a safer turn before we try to go in for that. Down comes a before recovery random walk to get rid of my Death Scythe. Totally fair. Don't want to see 800, 1,000 per turn kind of hitting you up there. Move to recovery, calling stone. And then looks like choosing to pass. Maybe choosing to pass. Drawing for turn, and a really nice top deck for before recovery for this deck in particular, because we're trying to get him below 5 cards. We're going to do a Loki's Insight. This deck is mostly quick cast stuff, so we want those cards gone. We do see the Spirit of the Mirage Ruins come out here, or the Sphinx of the Mirage Ruins get discarded. A couple of Lorites come down, but those don't do anything to Snake Morph because it's untouchable. So we'll get rid of the number 13 and the statue of the Misty Dragon. This puts us in a very, very good spot. Like, this is very, very good. We're just going to go straight in for 6 to start off the bat. Where there's 3 cards left. We get to draw 2, handful of cards. And that Sphinx is not going to be able to do much. Now, trying to answer the minigame is important, right? But we'll see exactly what happens from there. Now, we're going to shuffle a card back in. One thing that I could have done here, so if I had the, you see I have access to the last movement, is if I'd already had access to last movement, we could put the Sphinx back in Azure's hand in response to the draw 2 shuffle in trigger, so that we maybe shuffle the Sphinx back into the deck. Like, that would have been nice, but ultimately not going to happen. We're just going to get to draw some cards here. And now we're going to see if we can try to bait out the, we're going to have the burn cards for hand anyway, so we're going to see if we can bait out this Lunar Lake again. Go in for a Romulus to try to go search for a Remus. That's going to get to go off. Remus is then going to try to go search for us for a Beast Chant. Interesting. No, I'm not going to Lunar Link the Romulus. We're going to probably try to Lunar Link the Remus, which makes the most sense. So we'll go back in and try to grab the Remus now. The Remus comes in. That's where the enter effect is going to get triggered. And then we're going to see the Lunar Lake come down to try to stop it. That's where we're going to burn one of our mirrors. Throw my mirror at Azure, unfortunately. And now we get to go search for a Beast Chant. We're going to grab Communication with Animals. And the main reason to grab Communication with Animals here is because it gets us another resident card in the graveyard that we can just RFG to produce some will. Because we want 2 cards RFG'd to make use of the... unchaseable part of Liberation of the Fires. It's very, very good. So we're going to go ahead and go grab a rabbit by revealing the bunny. It goes in the graveyard. The Communication of Animals can be done. You can still have to discard a card at the end of turn. We're just going to discard another communication with animals. And then after draw, but before recovery, so before we get the minigame trigger, we're actually going to burn our Genshi Tenshon here for a last movement. Oh, wait, maybe not. We're going to burn a mirror to do last movement to then put the Sphinx back in hand. We do not want the minigame going off here. We're already at a pretty good spot, and we're going to try to maybe see if we can close out the game next turn with Genshi. So having a good amount of reactionary elements, having the snake outs, we're going to get to draw a lot of cards, having a couple fire guys on field. Like, we're in a spot where we're feeling pretty good about our ability to push lethal, and Azure just has not been able to get anything going this game, which has been very, very nice for us. Capitalizing on a rough hand that has not been able to stay clean thanks to Snake Morphed ripping cards out of the hand. So we know the hand is a couple of Lorites. We don't know what else is in the hand at this point. A couple Lorites and a Sphinx. And it's too low to be able to draw any more cards off of Christie. So we're going to try to move to recovery, call Stone. Going to use the mirror to solarize the replicant Genshi Tenshon. This is why we used the mirror before. Get that mirror back in the deck to use later. And now we get to swing in for 10 with Lyka. Takes Azure down to 5. We get to draw 2 cards. And rip one of those cards out of the hands. Hoping to see the Sphinx. 2. We did actually hit the Sphinx there, which was nice. So now Azure's hand at this point in time is an unknown and 2 Lorites. And down comes another snake, which now will have unblockable, and because of Genshi Tenshon, we'll be able to swing in for the last 500 damage. And we still have a mirror to be able to protect it if there was anything to stop it. So can't be blocked. Gonna get to swing in, hit for 5, taking it to a game 3. So here in game 3, we're going to be going second, or we're going to be going first, hoping to see a much better hand than what we currently are looking at. You see holding on to exclusively Horn and Mirror, and drawing into not much else. Just not a very good opening hand for this deck. We're going to go ahead and throw out the Horn of the Sacred Beasts. Now, there is a world where Horn isn't terrible. It's a pump up for Lyka, which is nice, but it's also could be used to mess with Hunter's area to stop it from being able to cheat something into the field from the graveyard if we get to that point. The problem is, as you see this hand, not great. Not a great hand to be able to establish any kind of meaningful progression. So just going to see a pass from Azure potentially after doing the look at the top and then sorting it out from there. Setting a card face down and passing the turn. Draw, recover. Probably going to see a hard pass from me. And then pass the turn. Yep. Knowing what the hand is, our goal is to try to get ourselves in a position to, 1, that is most likely a Lunar Lake is what we're feeling, and 2, we do not want... We're trying to minimize the card advantage. If there's any way we can get Azure comfortably below 5 cards, like to 3 cards, then we kind of snowball from there at keeping him off card advantage, which is what's best for us. Literally seeing pay 3, put a bunch of cards face down. We're gonna see Loki's Insight. This is helpful, right? If there's 2 quick cast cards, this certainly gets him below 5. We're gonna rip out the Sphinx. We're going to rip out the there. So now Christie is suddenly not letting us draw any more cards, which is great. Another Vaporization. We're going to pay 3 for it. Play another Horn. You see, very reactionary hand, not very proactive hand, which is not great. Not a great spot for us to be in. And so we're just going to pass the turn there. We're going to go ahead and see a coin before recovery for Reflected Blue Moon. This will get us back up to 5 cards. Draw back up to 4. Reflected Blue Moon draws you back up to 5. Christie will get you draw you back up to 6. So just like that, we ripped a bunch of cards out of the hand. Did not matter. So it's not going to be in a good spot for us. there, especially with how slow the hand has been for the Snake Morph deck, which is just sometimes how it goes when you play kind of a Voltron build. Sometimes you don't have the keys to start the engine, and so you just hope that the rest of the deck can kind of keep things satisfied. But when you're playing against a deck that has so much hand advantage, it is a problem when you can't get things moving. That Reflected Blue Moon is currently calling Snake of Aradia, which is a double-decker bad thing, because now Therion Morphing does cost me 1 to be able to play, to do, which is real rough. Now comes the Albrecht paying 2 for it, so that we don't have to worry about getting hit by the mirror that's in hand. And we do see a rabbit. And the Romulus would have been great to be able to cast and then be able to get some kind of value off of it. Now we do see, this is a bit of a mistake, I feel. We could have done last movement for 3 to put both the Albrecht and the Romulus back in hand, because it couldn't be cast this turn anyway. Instead, I just put the Romulus back in hand. I think the idea is stop the enter effect from being a problem again next turn when we're already behind. But I would argue that we need to get things moving, and we're not in a great space for that. So trying for Rabbit of Aradia by discarding a Rabbit of Aradia. Lunar Lake's going to come down. We're going to burn the mirror on the Lunar Lake. So we're still going to try to look at the top 3 and fully whiff, which is sucky. Try to play the last card in our hand. It's a Romulus. There's another Lunar Lake, and we concede. So there was no reason to keep playing. Deck profiles for both of these lists will be up later this week. Hope to see you all at the live stream at Worlds. And until next time, this is DMO73 saying class dismissed.